Have you ever made a decision in less than 10 seconds and spent the rest of your life paying for it? Imagine chasing luxury, gold chains, velvet nights, fast life, champagne promises, believing you're building an empire, only to realize the most valuable thing in the world was standing right in front of you the entire time. Tonight's story isn't just about crime. It's about jealousy disguised as loyalty. It's about pride louder than love. It's about a man who thought status was strength, until one reckless trigger turned true love into irreversible regret. This is the story of ambition without emotional control, of street code over silence, of gunpowder louder than conversation, of a message that arrived 10 seconds too late. You're going to see how diamond illusions can blind a fragile heart, how broken trust can be nothing more than a misunderstanding fueled by ego, how blood money can never buy back destiny, and how two angels were lost in a single heartbeat. But here's the deeper question. What if the real luxury was never the mansion lights? What if the real empire was fatherhood? What if the most powerful move a man can make is simply to pause? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you won't look at jealousy, pride, or revenge the same way again. And if stories like this make you think deeper about life, love, and choices, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because here, we turn music into lessons you'll never forget. Sunday night felt like one of those quiet velvet nights where the world pretends to be peaceful, but destiny is already writing something else in the shadows. He was at home, scrolling through his phone, thinking about luxury, fast life, and all the designer dreams he swore he'd touch one day. The mansion lights weren't his yet, but in his mind, he could already see the empire forming. Gold chains, champagne promises, status, spotlight, that lifestyle was calling his name. And when ambition whispers softly, it doesn't sound like danger. It sounds like opportunity. He wasn't chasing trouble. He was chasing power moves and silent wealth. At least that's what he kept telling himself. He had that hunger, you know? The kind that mixes cash flow fantasies with street code loyalty. Growing up around shadows and sirens teaches you that money feels like protection, and status feels like love. The fast life looks glamorous from a distance, like diamond illusions shining under club lights. But sometimes, what looks like luxury is just temptation dressed in gold. He believed he could balance ambition and true love without losing either. He thought he could have empire and heartbeat in the same hand. And that illusion was the first crack in everything. Earlier that evening, he was waiting for her call, the love of his life, his fragile heart, his obsession wrapped in devotion. She wasn't just passion, she was promise. The kind of soul connection that makes a man believe in forever, even when he pretends he doesn't. He imagined her smile under neon lights, her laughter cutting through the noise. He told himself tonight would be celebration, champagne promises, and velvet nights together. But sometimes silence speaks louder than words. And that silence started to feel strange. Hours passed, and the call never came. His pride stepped in before his patience could. "Let's hit the party," he texted his friend, masking jealousy as confidence. Because when broken trust knocks softly, most men don't sit with it, they escape it. The club wasn't just music, it was status, spotlight, high-stakes energy. The bass felt like power, like cash flow pumping through his veins. And with every drink, ambition turned reckless. Inside the party, gold chains glittered, champagne overflowed, and temptation moved like perfume in the air. The fast life was seductive, luxury in motion, diamond illusions dancing under flashing lights. But when you mix obsession and alcohol, reality starts to bend. He scanned the crowd, heart beating faster than the music. That's when he saw her. And everything inside him shifted. She was there, laughing, close to another man, wrapped in what looked like betrayal. In that split second, jealousy screamed louder than logic. He didn't see context, he didn't see innocence, he only saw broken trust. The empire in his mind started to crack. His fragile heart turned into ego. And when pride takes the wheel, destiny tightens its grip. The velvet night was no longer soft, it turned into shadows and silent rage. He felt the street code rise inside him, loyalty twisted into revenge. His ambition, his greed, his obsession, all colliding at once. And instead of breathing, instead of asking, instead of listening, he chose silence. And sometimes, silence is the loudest trigger of all. And what he would do next would turn luxury into blood money and love into something irreversible. The club doors opened like the gates to a different universe, where luxury wasn't a dream but a performance. Velvet nights wrapped around flashing lights, gold chains reflecting ambition in every direction. Champagne promises floated through the air, mixing with perfume, sweat, and temptation. He stepped inside carrying ego, status, and a fragile heart pretending to be invincible. The fast life seduced him instantly, whispering about empire, spotlight, and power moves. Cash flow fantasies pulsed with the bass, shaking the floor beneath his designer dreams. And somewhere in that noise, destiny quietly positioned him for a lesson he wasn't ready for. He tried to play it cool, laughing loud, moving like he owned the mansion lights already. Street code confidence on the outside, silent jealousy forming on the inside. Because when you mix obsession with pride, your mind starts writing stories without proof. He told himself love required dominance, loyalty required control, and status required respect. But real devotion doesn't scream, it waits, it listens, it trusts the heartbeat. Instead of breathing, he drank more, letting champagne blur the lines of reason. And every sip turned diamond illusions into distorted reflections of broken trust. Then he saw her across the room under neon shadows and spotlight flashes. She looked radiant, glowing in a way that made the entire empire in his mind shrink. True love stood right there, laughing, alive, unaware of the storm forming. But next to her was a man, close enough to ignite jealousy instantly. Their bodies leaned toward each other, and that image pierced him like gunpowder smoke. His fragile heart tightened, obsession whispering betrayal before logic could speak. And ambition suddenly felt small compared to the fire burning in his chest. You see, jealousy is subtle at first, like a shadow at the edge of a velvet night. It doesn't ask questions, it creates conclusions, and it calls them truth. He didn't see context, didn't search for explanation, didn't allow silence to clarify. Instead, he let pride rewrite the scene into disrespect and broken trust. In his mind, loyalty had been violated, devotion replaced with humiliation. And when ego feels wounded in public, revenge starts sounding reasonable. That's the dangerous illusion of the fast life. Emotions escalate faster than thought. His friend tried to talk, tried to calm the storm rising in his expression. But street code and masculine pride don't like being advised in front of spotlight lights. He brushed it off, saying he was fine, though his heartbeat said otherwise. Inside, regret hadn't arrived yet, only anger and reckless choice were growing. The bass felt louder now, like sirens echoing in a future he couldn't see. Luxury around him turned hollow, champagne tasting like bitterness instead of celebration. And love, the very thing he claimed to protect, was slipping into shadow. He walked closer, watching every move like a detective chasing betrayal. Their laughter stabbed deeper than any weapon ever could. He didn't hear their words, didn't see her innocence, only saw possession threatened. Obsession twisted into paranoia, and paranoia into a silent vow. Blood money and empire suddenly felt meaningless without control. He convinced himself respect had been stolen in plain sight. And when a man believes that, he starts preparing for irreversible decisions. Without saying a word, he turned away from the velvet lights and the music. Silence wrapped around him heavier than the bass he just left behind. Ambition, greed, jealousy, love, all colliding into one reckless heartbeat. The fast life no longer felt glamorous. It felt personal, humiliating. He stepped outside into the cold night air, breathing like a man betrayed. And instead of choosing conversation, he chose distance and darkness. And that decision would lead him straight toward the trigger waiting in the shadows. The night air hid his face, but it didn't cool the fire inside him. Jealousy was no longer a shadow, it had become a voice screaming betrayal. He replayed the scene again and again, editing it to hurt more each time. In his mind, broken trust was already a confirmed verdict. Obsession painted details that may not have even existed. Luxury, spotlight, champagne promises, all of it now felt like mockery. And when pride feels exposed, revenge starts dressing like justice. He walked fast, hands trembling, heartbeat louder than distant sirens. Street code whispered that disrespect must never go unanswered. Ambition had always pushed him toward empire and power moves. But tonight ambition shifted, it wanted dominance, not success. The fast life teaches reaction before reflection. Cash flow, status, gold chains, none of it prepares you for emotional warfare. And emotional warfare is where most reckless choices are born. Inside his head, she wasn't innocent anymore. She had become a symbol of humiliation in front of mansion lights and shadows. He convinced himself loyalty had been broken publicly. True love, in his distorted logic, would never allow that image. He forgot that love also requires patience and conversation. Instead, ego wrapped itself around his fragile heart. And ego rarely asks questions before pulling triggers. He reached his place still shaking with anger. Silence filled the room like a warning he refused to hear. On the table sat his weapon, cold, heavy, irreversible. Gunpowder doesn't ask about context. A trigger doesn't care about unborn dreams. Blood money and street code don't teach emotional maturity. They only teach response. He stared at the weapon longer than he'd ever admit. For a second, just 1 second, regret tried to enter. A quiet thought, what if I'm wrong? But jealousy is louder than wisdom when pride is wounded. He thought about loyalty, about respect, about not looking weak. He thought about empire, status, and reputation. He did not think about forgiveness. That's the dangerous thing about destiny. Sometimes it waits patiently for one impulsive decision. Not years of crime. Not blood money. Not ambition. Just one moment where emotion overrides logic. He grabbed the weapon, convincing himself he was restoring balance. In reality, he was walking toward irreversible loss. And every step back toward the club felt heavier than the last. The music was still playing when he returned. Velvet Nights continued as if nothing had shifted. She was still there, still glowing under spotlight lights. The man beside her still laughing, unaware of the storm approaching. He didn't breathe. He didn't call her name. He didn't search for truth. And in the next heartbeat, destiny would demand its price. The bass was still vibrating when he stepped back into the velvet night. Luxury lights flickered over faces that had no idea destiny was about to shift. Gold chains shimmered, champagne promises still floating in careless laughter. She stood there under the spotlight, glowing like true love untouched by danger. He felt invisible, swallowed by shadows and silent jealousy. Ambition, pride, obsession, all louder than reason. And in his trembling hand rested a reckless choice disguised as justice. He didn't shout her name. He didn't ask a single question. Broken trust had already been sentenced in his mind. Street code told him humiliation must be answered immediately. The fast life teaches reaction before reflection. Gunpowder doesn't negotiate with patience. And ego doesn't allow vulnerability in public. Time slowed in that moment. He saw her laugh again, unaware of the storm approaching. The man beside her leaned closer, still innocent in context. But obsession had already erased innocence from the picture. All he could see was betrayal framed by mansion lights. His fragile heart hardened into cold resolve. And his finger found the trigger. The sound shattered the velvet night. Music stopped, screams replaced champagne promises. Luxury turned into chaos in less than a second. Blood money couldn't silence what had just happened. 2 bodies fell where love once stood. 2 angels collapsed under flashing lights. And destiny sealed itself in irreversible silence. For a second, everything froze. The empire he dreamed of crumbled in his chest. Gunpowder smoke mixed with regret that arrived too late. Sirens hadn't even begun, but judgment already had. He stared at what he'd done, unable to process it. Ambition meant nothing now. Status meant nothing now. People ran, shouting, scattering into shadows. The fast life evaporated in pure terror. He stood there shaking, no longer powerful, only broken. Jealousy had promised relief, but delivered devastation. Street code offered no comfort. Luxury offered no protection. And silence wrapped around him like a prison already forming. Then his phone vibrated in his pocket. A small notification in the middle of chaos. He almost ignored it, but something pulled him. Hands trembling, he opened the message. The words blurred at first, then became painfully clear. Love, I'm at the party with my brother. I have good news. And what he read next would destroy what little was left of him. His hands trembled harder than when he pulled the trigger. Gunpowder still lingered in the air as he stared at the glowing screen. Luxury lights flashed around him, but everything felt distant now. Sirens were beginning to rise in the background like judgment arriving. He read the first line slowly, heart pounding in confusion. Love, I'm at the party with my brother. And reality cracked open beneath his feet. With my brother. The words echoed louder than the gunshot itself. Broken trust suddenly looked like a tragic illusion. Jealousy exposed itself as a liar dressed in ego. Street code had whispered revenge, but love had been innocent. He swallowed hard, breath turning shallow. And then he read the next line. I have good news. Good news. Those two simple words felt like knives now. Ambition, empire, status, none of it mattered anymore. His fragile heart beat against his chest like it wanted to escape. Blood money could never buy back this moment. And destiny was not done speaking yet. I'm pregnant. The world stopped completely. Not metaphorically, completely. Luxury turned meaningless, champagne promises now cruel jokes. An unborn dream had existed inside her. A heartbeat he had created. A daughter, his angel. The message continued, it's a girl. A girl. His mind tried to imagine her face for a second. Small hands, tiny heartbeat, calling him father one day. Fatherhood, a luxury greater than mansion lights or gold chains. A future built not on cash flow, but on love. And he had destroyed it in one irreversible choice. Two angels. The love of his life and his unborn daughter. Two lives erased by jealousy and reckless pride. Gunpowder had stolen more than bodies. It stole destiny. He felt his empire collapse into dust inside his chest. No spotlight, no power moves, no status could fix this. Only regret remained. Sirens grew louder now, finally catching up to him. People pointed, cried, recorded the chaos. He dropped the phone as tears finally broke through ego. Street code offered no protection from guilt. Luxury offered no escape from consequences. The fast life had delivered its final invoice. And prison bars were already waiting in the distance. The sirens didn't just arrest his body that night. They arrested his illusion of control, his empire fantasy, his belief that luxury and power moves made him untouchable. As the cold metal of handcuffs tightened around his wrists, he realized something brutal. Street code doesn't protect you from consequence, and blood money doesn't negotiate with destiny. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the pavement like broken mansion lights, mocking the designer dreams he once chased. People whispered, phones recorded, headlines formed before sunrise. The fast life that once felt glamorous now felt like a cheap disguise ripped away in public. And as he sat in the back of that police car, staring at his trembling hands, he didn't see gold chains anymore. He saw gunpowder residue and regret. That was the first night silence truly became louder than music. Prison bars are different from shadows at a party. They don't move, they don't fade, and they don't lie to you. The cell was small, cold, stripped of status, stripped of spotlight, stripped of ego. There were no champagne promises in there, only metal bunks and echoes of other men replaying their reckless choices. Luxury had once meant velvet nights and fast cars. Now luxury meant 5 extra minutes in the yard under gray skies. The empire he wanted had shrunk into 4 concrete walls. And every night, when silence wrapped around him, the ghosts of 2 angels would visit. Not in horror, but in innocence. He would see her face the way it used to glow under soft light, not the way it fell under chaos. He would imagine the unborn dream, a daughter with his eyes, maybe her smile, maybe her laughter echoing through a small house that could have been filled with real love instead of ambition. Fatherhood, he realized too late, was the true silent wealth. Not cash flow. Not status. Not spotlight. Just small hands gripping your finger. That understanding didn't come fast. It came slowly, painfully, like a lesson carved into bone. And regret became his most loyal companion. In prison, time stretches differently. Minutes feel like hours, and hours feel like judgment. He watched younger men arrive with the same obsession, the same pride, the same belief that revenge equals respect. He saw himself in them, chasing empire through shadows. Sometimes they'd talk about loyalty, about betrayal, about how they had to pull the trigger to protect their name. And he would just shake his head quietly. Because the illusion of betrayal is the most dangerous luxury of the ego. It makes you feel powerful for 1 second and destroys your destiny forever. At night, when the facility dimmed and silence took over, he would whisper apologies into the darkness. Not dramatic speeches, just broken sentences. "I'm sorry. I should have listened. I should have asked." The angels didn't answer, but in his mind, he saw them. One grown, one still small. In those moments, he understood something most men learn too late. Jealousy is not strength, and control is not love. True love requires courage, the courage to pause. And he had failed that test. Years passed. The fast life faded into distant memory. Gold chains were replaced by prison numbers. Mansion lights replaced by fluorescent ceilings. But reflection replaced arrogance. He began reading about emotional discipline, about forgiveness, about how ambition without wisdom becomes destruction. He started mentoring younger inmates, telling them that status earned through fear collapses fast. That street code can't raise a child. That gunpowder steals more than enemies, it steals your own future. And every time he closed his eyes, he still saw 2 angels. Not accusing, not angry, just present. A reminder that destiny can turn in 1 second. That love is fragile. That silence before a decision is sacred. And while prison bars confined his body, regret reshaped his soul. But the question that haunted him daily was this: could redemption ever exist for a man who erased his own unborn dream? 20 years can humble a man in ways luxury never could. By the time gray began to replace black in his beard, the fast life felt like someone else's story, a reckless young man chasing spotlight without understanding the weight of responsibility. Prison had stripped him of ego piece by piece. Not through violence. Through silence. Through repetition. Through nights where regret replayed like a broken record. And somewhere in that slow erosion, something inside him softened. Guilt remained, but arrogance dissolved. He began speaking at small prison rehabilitation programs, not because he believed he deserved forgiveness, but because he understood consequence. He would tell them about the velvet night, about jealousy dressed as betrayal, about how obsession rewrites reality. He would describe how one reckless choice destroyed true love, unborn dreams, and fatherhood in a single breath. And the younger men would listen differently when he said this: the most expensive luxury in the world is emotional control. Because blood money can be earned again. A life cannot. Sometimes he imagined an alternate destiny. A small apartment instead of prison bars. A crying baby instead of sirens. Sleepless nights holding a daughter instead of sleepless nights replaying gunshots. He imagined teaching her to walk, hearing her call him dad, feeling that silent wealth grow daily. That parallel life became both torture and motivation. It reminded him what greed and pride had stolen. And it reminded him what truly matters. When he finally walked out after decades, the world had changed. Technology different. Music different. The fast life still tempting new generations with diamond illusions and designer dreams. But he walked slowly now. Carefully. As if every step required awareness. Freedom didn't feel glamorous. It felt heavy. Because redemption isn't loud. It's quiet and consistent. It's waking up every day choosing not to repeat the same emotional mistake. He visited a small church one afternoon, not out of religion, but out of reflection. He sat in the back and whispered again, "I'm sorry." Not asking for erasure of consequences. Just asking that his story might prevent someone else's tragedy. Because maybe redemption isn't about being forgiven. Maybe it's about transforming regret into warning. About turning irreversible pain into protective wisdom. About using your downfall to interrupt someone else's reckless choice. When young men approached him later, asking about street code and respect, he didn't lecture. He told them about silence. About pausing before reacting. About calling instead of assuming. About asking instead of attacking. He told them love requires strength greater than pride. That empire without family is empty. That status without peace is hollow. And that destiny can collapse in one heartbeat. And every night, before sleeping, he still thought of 2 angels. Not as ghosts anymore. but as guardians of his conscience, reminding him that luxury fades, power fades, spotlight fades, but choices echo forever. And maybe, just maybe, the only empire worth building is the one inside your character. Now I want to ask you something real. If he had paused for just 10 seconds, if he had chosen silence over pride, if he had asked instead of assuming, do you think destiny would have changed? This story isn't just about luxury, crime, jealousy, or fast life. It's about emotional control. It's about how broken trust can sometimes be just a broken perception. It's about how empire means nothing without love. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever made a decision you wished you could take back? Do you believe redemption is possible after something irreversible? And what song should we transform into a powerful story next? Drop the name of the music below. Let's build this channel together, turning passion, regret, love, and destiny into unforgettable stories. And if you want more stories like this, raw, emotional, and real, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next story might hit even closer to home.